And thank you very much for joining us here on the Job Scam Report. We are back after some time. This time we got the whole crew with us. Ashley, thanks very much for coming back to us. I'm glad that you're feeling well now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yep. And Jay Jones, aka the Profiler. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. Glad to be back once again. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we're all back and we're doing our thing and we're not trying to miss a beat at all. We love to hear from you in the comments. I'll be watching the chat and they may be able to watch the chat as well where they're at. I may not be able to watch it as much because I'm running the board here. So there's a lot of things and a lot of pieces that are going on, and we're going to try to make it very informational for you, very informative, and hopefully it will give you lots of value going down the field. But there's a lot of things that are happening in news that are happening with us as well, and vice versa. So hopefully, again, we'll be able to attack as many issues as possible. I'm going to start off by saying that, yeah, the federal layoffs has a lot to do with everything that we do here as far as at the Job Scam Report. And if you've been subscribed to the Job Scam Report, you've heard me talk about the weekend that it started happening, that started to get some resources up. And there's plenty of places for resources. I'm not the only resource except for how it relates to job scams, because as you guys might agree, as layoffs happen, more scams will become more prevalent, and the parasites will be out looking to use whatever they possibly can, whatever tool they possibly can to get you before they got you. But first of all, the thing that is probably the thing that's happening right now is a lot of uncertainty brings on a lot of anxiety, because the federal government or the judge or one of the judges had halted the firings as they were happening on a mass level. Some things have happened, like people who were under probation. If they were under a year, they pretty much got the axe. So therefore, there are 10,000 of them, but that's enough to prompt scammers to go out and to make things happen. Have you guys seen any of that through LinkedIn or for some other, maybe through some of your groups, Ashley, that have you had anybody affected in your group?
So inside of my group, Cyber Tribe, I have not had anybody that's been impacted by job layoffs.
Good.
However, I have made everybody aware that trying to pursue a position in the federal government right now should be put on pause.
No.
Things that are happening right now, it doesn't make sense to put yourself into that drama, at least not at this state. But it's very easy to identify who, like just going on LinkedIn and putting in certain prompts, it's really easy to identify who was a federal employee who got laid off, because they'll usually put their end date. And it's very easy to target them for scams. And so you have to really be paying attention to what you're responding to and not allow that desperation to have income coming in cloud your judgment and make you fall for these scams.
Yeah, absolutely. How
Yeah.
about you, Jay?
I've seen several people in my network announce that they were laid off from the federal government, and part of their galvanization is they're using a hashtag. I forget what it actually is, but they're using a hashtag to like group themselves together so that they can be easily found for different opportunities. But what that does is it easily makes them found by scammers. I don't know. Like I said, I don't remember what the hashtag is. But the other issue is when you're a federal employee, you have a much different resume than a civilian. And like you said, Ashley, navigating and staying out of that mess, you're going to have to convert your resume from a federal one to a civilian one. And that's where these guys come in, and they'll, like I said before, they steal people, real resume writers' information, and then pass that off. That's their credentials that they're using. And then from there, they'll steal your information and then access your credit card information when it comes to saying that your federal resume is not compliant with the new civilian requirements. They'll use whatever verbiage they have to like sound it. And many federal people, when they get a job in the federal government, they don't leave. They typically retire from it. And so
Right.
when you're suddenly laid off and you don't know where to turn and the English job market is horrible, then that's where the desperation immediately kicks in. And then you're more likely to go for things that you wouldn't. And it doesn't mean that you're not smart. It doesn't mean that you should feel stupid because you get scammed or anything like that. It's just It's a learning experience if it did happen to you. And then what we do here with the Job Scam Report live videos is help you avoid those going forward.
And that's a good point too. There's something is very important point about the resume as well, because in the resume, federal resumes, they're much longer than the civilian resume on a regular basis. In other words, if you just got your first federal job through your probation, that may not affect you as much as somebody who's been in 20, 30 years, because you're
Yeah.
required, when you put in, do federal resume, you're required to put in everything that you've ever done from high school, from your first job to the time being, no matter how relevant it is, because they're basically tracking integrity as much as they are your experience. So that's going to be a pause. So when you come back to the civilian life, you're going to need to truncate that in. I don't see that being a problem for a lot of federal workers, since they were new. They've been there under a year. The question might be, should I put my job there? I think you should put your job there if it's been like 9 months or 6 months or longer. You might want to consider it. It depends. It depends on the experience. It depends how relevant the experience is compared to the jobs that you'll be going to. So there's a lot of nuances there that you'll need to really consider. I don't want to give a blank state answer saying, yes, do this, or no, don't do that. So that way you'll have to take it case by case, depending upon what jobs, what the industry is, and what the market is. Ashley, did you have any advice for those who are in that situation?
When it pertains to that resume, it's interesting that you say that, because every now and then I have people come to me who were working in federal that need to transition. And so what I usually say is, about if you have to redo your resume and you have to condense it some, 10, maybe 15 years, but usually about 10 years of experience, and then really target it to the positions that you're applying for. Like, you might have had to do specific duties in your role that wouldn't apply to a position you're doing in the private sector. And so you want to focus in on the aspects of your responsibilities and accomplishments that have a direct correlation. And that's how you're going to start getting more interview opportunities. It's one of the things that I have my clients do for cybersecurity, is focus in on the aspects of your roles that specifically deal with the jobs you're applying to, and then base your resume off of that. And then also just be mindful, just because somebody says that they're a resume writer, whether they are professional or not a certified resume writer, you really should be doing some checks to make sure that, like, they can create something for you that's going to get you opportunities, not just because they say that they have this credential, but check references, check backgrounds, see what their past clients have said that are actually legitimate, that you can verify, because people will try to have like other people do it for them. You just got to be
Mhm.
careful right now,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of people preying on people. And then lastly, Mark and I and Jay, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I'll share with you guys a bunch of platforms you can use to bring in some extra income, so that you can at least keep food on the table and the lights on as you're navigating the job market.
And then there's one
Very good.
quick thing I wanted to add
Go ahead, Jay.
regarding the flow of how these resume writers work when they're scamming. What they'll do is they'll target you by sending you a message. It's typically an open-ended message. It starts off complimentary. They'll say they can't believe someone like you with your decades of expertise is in the job market. If they really didn't read your profile, they'll ask you a dumb question. What brings you into the job market? Clearly you were laid off. That's what brought you into the job market. But they do what I call cliffhanger messages. So they'll ask you an open-ended question to get your engagement. And then from there, they'll lead you down maybe 2 to 3 messages, and then they'll ask for your resume. And then they'll tell you that it failed the ATS, and then you need to pay them in order to have it pass the ATS. But in that instance of this just one thread of messages, they got your personal information, and then they get your bank account information through your credit card if you do decide to pay them to revamp your resume and beat the ATS, which is a myth. Then the second thing is, if anybody messages you or sends a comment to you on LinkedIn saying that they can help you with your resume, send it to this Gmail address. That's 100% a scam, because people don't openly share their email because of all the scams that are going on. And then the other avenue that they use is they'll say that they can connect you with this expert resume writer that is this nebulous person off of Fiverr or Upwork. And from there, they'll say that they'll get you to this expert who will help you, but it's really either their profile or a co-conspirator with them. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great information. I try not to venture into the different opinions of resume writers feeling that other people are scam artists because look at their profile, look at their, we can go down that road. That's such a long and dirty road because there are other people who think they're fake and they keep pointing us like the Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. It's like, you, but that's, so that, I don't want to get into that discussion. That's something I'm going to let the resume writers and recruiters, let them all fight that out and do their thing. What I'm interested in is the crime aspect and where job scams are actually happen. Though I think this we discussed here is very important because there are people who are faking to be resume writers. And when they get your credentials, that they can do some damage for you long term, especially if they get a hold of a federal resume of yours. Like they say, well, send me your resume that, as you have it now. You've got all your personal information on there to be able
Yeah.
as you it has all because the federal government, they want everything on that resume. And no matter how long, so they can really pretend to be you if they wanted to because they have your job history. And so if unless you're applying to USA Gov,
Jobs.
USAjobs.gov,
Mhm.
unless you're applying that, that resume, that version of your resume shouldn't be in anybody's hands. Uh, and
Yeah.
we can go expand on that. I won't. But basically, if somebody's asking for that, you should consider them suspect. I think that part is important. I think another part that is important is how people. I think again, it'd be good to cover how people can check to make sure that if they're approached by someone, they get a weird text. When you get a text, you should just forget it. But that's another story for another time. But when you get approached to somebody who says that they have a job or they want to offer you a job, the things that you can do, because I think there are people who are still getting scammed just by some of that basic. I think we've come a long way as far as I see, but we have such a long way to go in educating people that people are falling for the low hanging fruit, even the scam, if the text or the email, or even if they received a phone call, the information is ambiguous. The usual offers of PTO, flex time, great pay. You can make $1,500
Fully
for
remote.
days by only working six hours a week is the thing that's still going around. There's a resource. We don't have to jump into all the resources yet, but I think there's one key resource that I think people should know about, and I didn't know till after we got off our last show, Jay, is whois.com. It's an excellent resource. If somebody says they work for a company and that they say they're a recruiter for that company, and you could check to see how long that website actually has been up. What has happened is, and I had a thing that Kelly Havneck has bought to me a few weeks ago, is that she got approached or she got a letter or someone in her group got a letter and with a job, say that they work for Disney. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into the scam, but what was interesting when we looked up whois.com, that person's experience with the company was way before the site and the company actually had formed. Right there, that was a wrap. But I think a lot of people don't know about that resource, and you should know about that resource. I'm putting it out there. Maybe I'll put a thing in the notes for everybody, but you can also go to some posts I referred to recently where I've shared that resource as one way for you to check scammers or check the validity of what somebody approaches you with. You guys want to add anything to that?
Yes, I do. Something to be aware of. Every now and then you may come across I call it a recruiter because it's not a legitimate recruiter, right?
Right.
And they will say, hey, we have this opening. Take a look at the credentials and let me know. And they'll send you like a PDF document. Tell them, take all that content out of that document and paste it right into the chat because there are ways that you can place malware inside of PDF documents. So next thing
Yes.
you know, You download this document thinking that you're looking at a job description, and now it's executing this code in the background to be able to log and track your typing, your keystrokes, and all of those things. So,
Mhm.
any you get a document, I don't care who it is. Anytime you get a document in your chat, like LinkedIn messaging, and you don't know this person, you haven't met them, nothing, you ask them to extract it because you can't download that file. The other thing I want to talk about, which is really important, is the way in which people are actually validating job opportunities. So as you mentioned, who is, right? But I oftentimes hear people say, go to the website and I'll check the website and see if it's a legit company. But you've already lost the battle. Before you ever go to a company's website, you need to be doing some research before you go to that link. Because for one, you
Mhm.
don't even know if that link is filled with malware as well. Link just because you found it in Google doesn't mean it's safe. There's something called SEO poisoning, where you can make something look like it's legitimate in search engines, but then once you come over, it's game over. You're now in their layer, right? So I always tell people, you get a notification like that, go on Reddit, look at Quora forums, go on Google and look at reviews, but you do not click on any links directly from the recruiter or from that company's Google page until you have validated that it is legitimate.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
love that. And I think that, yeah, I think we've mentioned in the show before that people shouldn't go directly to a link that someone sends them, that they should
No.
Google it first. And in fact, I would even say, depending upon if you have, I think the antivirus software still does this on some computers where it will alert you if a site is skeptical. And it will say, and it will have within the context of Google saying, hey, this has a warning. I don't know if it still has that. I use a different software now than that, but I know Norton did it once upon a time. Maybe yours, you could put that in the chat if it has. But go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, and then speaking on your recent story with the Who Is and involving Disney, I had an issue many months ago when it came to a profile that I found on LinkedIn. It had like over 23,000 followers, and they claimed to
Hmm.
have worked at Disney, but the picture was a stolen image of an attorney who wasn't even on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And this profile had been on LinkedIn for at least 8 to 10 years. So there was a lot of work done with his profile in order to scam people and look real, because I had hundreds of mutual connections that were connected to this person and they had no idea. There were no outward appearances of anything blatant when it came to scamming, but I was able to get that profile down. That's the length that they'll go. They'll go decades just to get one person. And then you to the point earlier about how much one scammed person is valued at. And for me, let's say that person is somebody that has good credit, like for example, and you apply for a credit card in their name, typical credit lines are like 3,000 and up if you have great credit. And one person is a significant win, quote unquote, for them. And then I recently posted a video about some questions you should ask yourself when you are approached by a quote unquote recruiter. Because like when you're in this market and you're either desperate or you're just rapidly applying to roles because you see how quickly they get filled with applicants, ask yourself, is this job I'm seeing on LinkedIn also on the company's website? Follow the steps that Ashley just outlined to make sure that it is the actual website. Is a real person from the company attached to the job description, because scammers don't have to add a profile to the job description. And then you ask, what is the recruiter's social proof? So do they have a lot of real, meaningful interactions with people? Or is it just a bunch of canned comments and things that don't offer anything relevant to the conversation of the post? And then did you even apply to this job? Because they'll also say that, hey, you've been shortlisted for this opportunity, and you'll
Hmm.
get excited, but always check your email and search for that specific company name, because I don't know any company that doesn't give you a confirmation of an application that you sent to them. Always check that.
There are companies that do have automated, if I'm not mistaken, some companies do have an automated response saying, thank you for applying and give some, but that's not regular. That's not a widely used thing, but it is something that has been used, and it is somewhat normal. We can argue whether how much more normal it needs to be these days, but I do wish that companies would, and I think there are some companies that are starting to say, "Hey, we need to go the extra mile to make sure that people feel safe when they
Mhm.
apply to us." And we talked about before how more companies need to be like NVIDIA, which they dedicate several pages to say, this is our hiring process. and we would never do these type of things. And small startups, that's going to be a different thing, but it's not that hard to validate them. But the larger people, and in fact, a lot of larger ones do, but those who hire and have higher turnover often don't. That's scary. So they could be, it's easy for them to be duped, for somebody else to put a profile up, for them to say that I'm a recruiter for the company, and therefore, and I think that's where a lot of people come. So I do think that's important. Thanks, Ashley, for your comment. She says, great information, always validate. And I think there's a lot of ways that people can validate. And there are other ways that people can. I'm going to give a shout out to one of my friends who's a recruiter. He was just on my mind just a moment ago. But whenever he got something that said that, hey, I like to connect and I like to talk, and it looked definitely like an automated message, he says, send me a LinkedIn invite. And that's usually the gotcha for that. But I think that's just one way. But I think another way too is to try to talk to the actual, try to find the real one. Make sure that person isn't being duped. That's happened several times. And I think each of us has gone and said, hey, let me see this person. And that there's several profiles by the same name with the same picture. And it's like, how can this be? But I just wish, and this is something that we could talk about, if there was a wish list for LinkedIn to do as far as helping people with scams, what would it be for you? What would it be for you?
Yeah, there's one thing that you can actually do right now that can help you, because what people are doing is they're doing that research that you just mentioned, Mark. They're going to these different profiles to see if they're legitimate. And what they're not realizing is because they haven't checked this particular setting in LinkedIn, now that page sees that you're active because it sees that you saw the profile. So now you're a fish, you're now a target. You can turn that feature off in LinkedIn so that you go in what's called like incognito mode. So if I look at Mark's page, he won't know that I looked at it. It'll just say someone from such company looked at your profile. Now you're keeping yourself safe as you're doing that research. So that's something that you can automatically do so that you're not making it clear to scammers that you're active and looking at their profile.
Okay. All right. Jay?
Yeah, just a quick way to do it is you go into settings and then you click visibility, and then you click page visit visibility, and then you turn that to off. And that way you appear, like Ashley says, as someone who views your profile. And then remind me of the question really good, because I got sidetracked looking.
What would be the thing that you
LinkedIn.
want LinkedIn to do today to help avert scams and scammers?
Yeah, one, really verify these jobs. You have someone that is a dedicated person from the company that is posting this job, have them be the point person that interacts directly with another human at LinkedIn. They both interact with each other and say, hey, I'm posting these jobs. These are the jobs that are real. The LinkedIn person then looks at that list of jobs, verifies that they're real. They both sign off on it. They're able to go live. Right now, what we're seeing is the ease of access is being abused. And so when you have just basically anyone can add a job, and I made a post about this many weeks ago, just hiring a chief elbow lotioner just to be funny and show how easy it is to list a job. And it's just, it has to be, which is a chief elbow lotioner. Yes. Salary was, I think, 200 to 300,000 a year. But,
All right. Put in my application.
but I'm not hiring, obviously. But I wanted to show in a funny way that this is clearly easily abused. The other thing is with profiles being added, it's just, there's no legislation. There's this company called US, UK, and Canada IT Staffing. And I've been on them for many months now. It's about 5 cases in now. And what they do is they steal real people's pictures, come up with these nonsense names like Lorick McDonald's and Lorick McCarthyism, Prince George, anything that just makes no sense. And then it's the first name is the last name and the last name is the first name. So it'll be like Carter George and things like that. And reported it, proved it beyond a reasonable doubt, but just the response time to reports and response times.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it's like what's gotten me success is the visibility and the clear, plain evidence that shows that it's a scam. The response time needs to be faster. Those are
Right.
the most
I'll
immediate
come
things.
back to that, but go ahead.
Yeah, what else? And then just the ability to block pages. That's the other thing because there are scam pages like Jobs for You and Fresher Jobs and things like that. And you can't block those pages. And the only way to work around it is to limit people who can follow you. But what happens is if you limit who follows you and you're trying to grow your following and grow your network to help other people and connect with people you don't know, when you turn that
Mhm.
feature off, then people you don't know who are legitimate can't connect or follow you anymore. And so you have to basically wade through this nonsense in every post and delete these comments manually as opposed to just being able to block a scamming page. So I think the ability to block pages is also paramount given how many fake ones there are.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I think that part where you talk about LinkedIn response time, that's something definitely can be, I think should be changed immediately, the response time, because when you report a page and it's obvious to the whole world that this is illegitimate, then it takes forever. In the meantime, there are people who can also fall victim because they haven't stopped trying.
I've
And
seen
we
them.
know
I've
as
seen them
well
every day.
they're going to also try to build another page. Now, I wonder if LinkedIn can block IP addresses, which could be something that could also be helpful in the sense that if people try to do duplicate accounts, it just blocks that IP address or that same computer. Now, people can use different computers. We can argue that, but people can't use 40 computers. To the average person wouldn't be able to. And I'm sure there might be other ways around it. And
Mm.
I'll let the cybersecurity fans and people who are in that profession chime in if they want to, but there must be a way to flag them. I think one of the things that could actually be a double-edged sword in a sense is one, they can flag the comments that are duplicate or comments that are duplicate, where people who
Mhm.
do two or three or four comments the same way. That's usually the sign of somebody being a job scam. Please send me a LinkedIn invite. I'll hook you up. Okay. And they say
Let's
that on
connect.
multiple profiles, and they've done that on multiple profiles or multiple posts. Then I think that LinkedIn should be able to flag that. It's similar to the way that Google flags websites that copies content. They flag
Mhm.
that site and it limits their visibility. They could do the same thing for posts. If somebody is even stealing posts, which I've had some stolen, I completely ignore them because I'm confident in my visibility and my name, particularly at this particular point, that people will steal other people's content. And there'll be several people who steal the same content. And scammers have done it as well. People who are not scammers, even they should ding that visibility in some kind of way or ding that
Mhm.
account in some kind of way. They should take a look at it. But that's one of the things they could do. Maybe I'm gonna look in the comments here and
Mark,
grab
can
one. Go
I
ahead,
add
Ashley.
something? So
Sure.
one of the interesting things about, oh, well, that's Michael. He's one of my members inside Tribe. Here's one of the things about like the whole IP address situation. So you said it's one thing to get 40 laptops, but the truth is it's very easy to change your IP address. Spend get up a VPN and next thing you've got a brand new IP
Right.
address. So it's
Yeah.
back in the day where you just had to have a whole computer, you can create as many fake IP addresses as you want. And I'm almost positive if LinkedIn has the security in place, they would be able to block IP addresses. The challenge, though, is the constant changing of IP addresses is not as easy to track, right? Because
Mhm.
you might have one IP address and then you create a VPN and you create a new one, and now it looks like it's from a completely separate device.
Right.
Here's
Right.
one.
And I was going to say that the VPN actually you could put a locate different locations in, and have a different IP address. That's what VPNs do, and they possible for someone who's sitting there watching you attack you. And sure, there's a lot of other reasons, but that's
Ooh.
there's 100 different choices for a site. So it does make it tough, but it does put it does add some sort of a layer of limitations that people can go about and do. But that's the suggestion. Go ahead, Ashley. You were going to say something else?
Yes, here's something in alignment with what Michael was saying, but this is a little bit of a different direction. Say you
Uh-huh.
found a position that you like, right? And you think that this company is legitimate because it checked all your bells and whistles, right? You went on their website and you said, oh, okay, this is a real company. It might not be.
Mhm.
Now you've created an account with them so that you can apply. So now they have your email address, potentially your password, because people tend to reuse their passwords for everything. If y'all
Mhm.
notice that.
Mhm.
Number one, if you want to keep yourself protected, do not reshare your passwords. Always generate a new one. So now he sent you an email telling you that you have to confirm that this email is legitimate. Now you
Mhm.
don't and game over. So you have to really do your research before you even go to these websites and before you click on any buttons, because now they have the ability to take your bank account information. They have the
Mhm.
ability to obtain your credit card information, shoot your email address, everything. And it's a cold world right now in the job market. And just as people are landing jobs, there's even a higher percentage of people who are getting scammed. So you have to be
Super careful. Absolutely, Jay.
This is an idea that came to mind seeing Michael's comment regarding card information. At this stage, I think it would be a great idea to use gift cards that are affiliated with just specifically purchasing services if you decide to do that in this job market. Because a gift card is a fixed amount, it's not tied to your account at all. It's funded purely by cash or a card. But in that instance, if they have that card, they can't do any damage beyond what the maximum allotment is on that. Or if you want to take it a step further, you can get a secured card and have it be at a fixed limit. And the only thing it's funded by is tangible cash. So $500, possibly do that. But I just think that there are instances where you do have to purchase services to help in your job search. If you do want to go with a resume writer, you can use a gift card or a secure card. But I think that having that layer of protection from your actual bank account is
Apple Pay
mandatory at this
is,
point.
yeah, Apple Pay is something. If somebody doesn't use Apple Pay, I'm not
Mm.
likely to use that service at these days because it's, to me, it's the most secure option that
Mhm.
people can have. Unless somebody in the comments wants to refute that, please let me know if it's wrong. But Apple Pay seems to be the securest, especially when as years have gone by where people have used a credit card at the gas station and have it ripped off because it's been copied or the email
Secure, right?
wasn't encrypted. Yeah, exactly. Abe, thanks Abe for commenting. Thanks Michael. He says two-factor authentication for emails. Absolutely. I know sometimes speed is relevant, but authentication, use it as much as you can. On my phone, I do this little trick that does things that would hold financial or personal information. I hide them as an app. So in case my phone is stolen, nobody can't find and doesn't know that app exists. So let's say you have your bank information on your phone, you can actually hide that app. And there's only one way to go find it. And you can use whatever method you decide to use, you can do that. Your phone company can help you with that, but you can actually make it so that if somebody did steal your phone or has access to it for whatever reason, you can hide that app so that information would be hidden. I hide my Evernote like that because I used that for many years now. It's got 15 years of personal information in it, and I hide it on my phone so nobody come. Now, it doesn't matter whether you know it's there or not, is that you won't be able to find it. And of course, you can always
Mhm.
add your security to those kind of apps as well. I use two-factor for my Evernote even. I think everybody should take more precautions as they possibly can. Let's go ahead and talk about resources. Ashley, you had some resources that those who are laid off can use and want to dedicate a little bit of time because again, we know a lot of people are laid off. Not we want people to do it safely, but we also want them to be more strategic and more intentional about their job layoffs instead of applying to 1,000 jobs this month. Go ahead and let's discuss some that you have there, Ashley.
Yes, I am somebody who in the past was subject to a layoff just as I was giving birth in labor in the hospital to my child. And I will never forget the panic of, oh my gosh, How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to buy diapers? How am I going to put food on the table? And so
Mhm.
this was back in 2017. I started doing a bunch of research and I came across a bunch of platforms that you can use as a freelancer, independent contractor, what have you, to bring in extra money each month. So you won't be considered an employee. You won't get health benefits, right? You might be
Mm.
able to get those from your state agency or whatever. But here's the thing, there's websites like UserTesting, USERTESTING.com, one of my favorite platforms. Basically, you take usability tests. They'll have you go through a specific set of steps and you'll tell them how easy or hard it is or give your opinions on things. It usually takes me about 7 minutes to complete one. And then you get paid $10 and they send it to you 14 days to PayPal. And some of those usability tests can be $60, some are $90, depending on how many minutes it takes. So you think you get a couple of those a week. Bam, next thing you know, you're covering your rent or you're covering your food bill. Also like UTest, which is the letter U, TEST.com. UTest is great in that you just test websites, applications, what have you. Sometimes you have to test. Here, Libby. Okay, you want to talk to her? Sometimes you'll test different device. Here, Libby. I'm sorry. Hold on one second, guys.
Okay. And me, user
Oh,
test. I was going to say that
mhm.
user test is a good one. It
And
is really, I've heard of it before.
have you used?
I've never used it. There've been other,
Mhm.
so many that are like that, that where you do a test and they usually take a lot of time, but they only paid you $5 if you took 20, 25 minutes for it. Like, stop
Mhm.
use of my time.
Yeah, I've been using UTest. I'm user testing for years. You'll
Mm,
see it in my LinkedIn profile. I use it anytime I want to make extra income. UTest
okay.
is great. I've used UTest to, I can't tell you guys because you're under NDA, but I've used
Mhm.
UTest to land and it also brought in a lot of funds. If you are without a job right now and you want to go out to dinner, you can use iSecretShop. The letter I, secretshop.com. This allows you to do mystery shopping at different places. So maybe you do a mystery shop at Red Lobster, right? And you have to fill out this report, follow certain steps. But now you've gotten yourself free dinner plus a additional payment of money. Maybe it's $30, $50, what have you. There's user interviews, which is also pretty similar to user testing and UTest as well, but these could pay you a lot. Like I've gotten $150 for doing one really quick thing that took me maybe ten minutes, right? And they'll pay you with gift cards, Amazon gift cards, Visa gift cards, what have you. I say all of this to say that not having a job does not mean you can't bring in income because a lot of times people associate the two. There's a lot of platforms out here that you can use online to bring in extra income. And of course, there's things
Mhm.
like Uber, DoorDash, Shipped. Depending on where you live, you might even be able to rent a car through Uber or Lyft if you don't have one. So you have a lot of ways to bring in at least a good $2,000, $3,000 per month while you're job hunting.
Yeah, great resources. And I think everybody's going to decide whether something's worth their time or if they have the patience to use some of those sites because some of these have stepped up over the years. Because I remember when they first started doing, like, again, the U testing is you spend all this time doing survey and it leads you down this rabbit hole and to get nothing sometimes. So people do have to vet them. Thank you for vetting those for us. And I think those would be legitimate ones that people can actually use. Let's go back to some of the comments that I said. Michael's chimed in a couple of times. He says here, and for some reason used it before I see it. I don't know why this is. But I think if I would go to the original, okay, so it's LinkedIn should be able to block the IP and host name. If they try to block the IP, the threat actor could create multiple, pretty much what you said there, which is part of the problem too, in the sense that they do a bunch of accounts anyway. And they, I think Jay, you had even showed on one of your posts on LinkedIn how somebody tried to copy one of my monikers, the voice of
Yeah.
job seekers, and it was like a lot of these profile. They didn't even try to look legitimate at all. It was all
Yeah.
lower cases, and it was like really strange. So and that's not to say that people are, when they copy, that they're really good in copying. But yeah, I think that's a good way too. Another way I thought about is you could look at somebody, the way I look at somebody's profile without looking at going into their profile, although I don't care if they go into the profile, they see that I am or not. But you can also search that person's name and then press post and then press latest to see if they actually post. And there's actually a way you can even see how they post, follow the comments. And you can see if they have duplicate comments, you know that they are scammers. I don't know what happened to Jay. He just suddenly disappeared, but
But no,
we'll,
I know what you mean about the comments. You'll look and it'll say, like, they'll have copied and pasted the same exact message 30, 50 times, and it'll be like,
yes.
your background, send me a
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. After four times, okay, Jay's back. I got to add him back. But after four times for me, 3 or 4 times, it's a wrap for me, showing that this person, all they're doing is just commenting like crazy. I think that's just one way. Another way to look at it without going into a section. But a lot of them, if they get too many people looking at them, they're going to disappear because they don't want that kind of visibility. Because then people are starting to talk about them, write posts about them, and then they got to disappear and come back as somebody else. In that sense, Jay, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, when I was cut off, I was talking about the account that stole your tagline, but they didn't have the word "the" in it. They call themselves Voice of Job Seekers. And,
Right.
what these scammers do from foreign countries is they'll use the American flag as their banner image. And so typically over here, when you see the American flag, it means patriotism and things like that. But when you see it in a
Right.
LinkedIn profile, I would caution you to be extra cautious because they're trying to look like they're in solidarity with the country and look like they're legitimate. They have no shame, no qualms about stealing anything that they deem credible to help them, continue to scam people. So yeah.
Absolutely. Abe came back and said thoughts on jobleads.com. I've never heard of jobleads.com.
Me neither.
Um, yeah, that's something you can always check out. I would check out the validity of the first to see if maybe they have a LinkedIn presence and a lot of these newer or less post job posting sites will have a LinkedIn presence instead of a website. You should definitely check it out and check it out to make sure that you can feel really good about applying to a place like that.
I am on Reddit. I think that's the first thing people need to just do is just do that research,
Go to
right?
Reddit.
Don't look at just Trustpilot because that can be manipulated. I've seen that happen with people where they manipulate Trustpilot and other platforms. But here's the thing, right? This Reddit forum that I'm looking at, it's got about 267 comments and they're not looking too great.
Yeah. Anything with leads in the name typically is like suspect because it's just they're trying to sound like anything that sounds like they're trying to sound legitimate. Just read it out loud and you'll see that it's not the best articulation of something. And then the other thing,
Right.
going back to the fake profiles, is when you see a recruiter that you suspect is fake or a resume writer, that typically this is the recruiter space. What these fake pages are different bot accounts that are made and that can quickly be activated when one gets burned. And so when you look at the end of the URL, it's typically like the last 3 to 4 numbers. They're always the same, regardless of the profile, because it's under the same bot account or bot accounts. And so if you see John Smith is 234 at the end, and then Jane Goodall is 234, and then Michael Samuel is 2342, then all those are indicators that is the same scammer using multiple bot accounts.
Yeah, and I think that people have to be even more educated still on how to research because a lot of different ways people can research. But I think there are LinkedIn is just one form of research. But if somebody has behavior or what I call scammy behavior, you should disengage. You shouldn't even be a thought about even if there are legitimate recruiters who have scammy behaviors. Different things.
Yeah, the ones that send you a message saying, "Hey, you're great for this role. You should apply," and then they ghost you. Scammy behavior.
Yeah, and it's not going to be worth your time. And unfortunately, everybody's getting some of those. Even people who are not even looking for a job or getting hammered with them. I think people just need to be more cautious and look at researching ahead of engaging and make sure you feel good. It doesn't hurt to ask other people what they think.
Mhm.
Other people
Yeah.
that what they think, or ask other recruiters, what do you think of this recruiter? I've done that before.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Yeah, I said, is this person legitimate?
And then there's a point that Ashley brought up regarding Trustpilot that is important. I wanted to bring back because I was talking with the owner of a company. I won't name it because it's a legitimate company. At the time, there was this fake company called StepX Resume that copied their website entirely by
Yeah, I
using
remember.
WordPress. And so how Trustpilot is often, it's a scammy behavior, but legitimate businesses do this. And here's what it is. When a person is a bad quote giver, or they might not necessarily be the most photogenic, or they didn't have any photos of themselves smiling and they left a review, what certain companies do is they'll use a stock photo that is a better look and then use the actual quote from the real person. Now, is that dishonest? Yes, because the actual picture you're looking at, that person didn't say this. But for your image and for the perspective of your company, when someone's looking, it's, oh, this is a great picture of this person who had this great thing to say about this company. I should do business with them. Because I also ran into this when I had my last full-time job. There was a project where we had to collect quotes for Women in Engineering Day, and not every person actually gave the best quote. For example, you ask them, like, what was your favorite thing about working here? And it's a great job, or it's a great experience. Like, not everyone is media trained, and not everyone knows how to like fully answer a question. And so that's where the creative licensing comes into play. But that creative licensing can turn into scammy behavior if it's not checked quickly.
Right. Another scammy behavior is somebody using a 15 or 20-year-old photo of themselves. That's scammy behavior.
But if that's how they see themselves.
Okay. But if you're asking for services, it's really a terrible look if you're selling services. That's just my opinion. Hey, to each his own. But we are on the last leg of our time together. Starting with Jay, do you have anything you want to add that we hadn't talked about yet?
Notifications for jobs on LinkedIn, because I have several notifications set. But then what I'm noticing is that when I get a notification about a job being available that matches my criteria, it's like a day late, and it's a day or 2 days late. And when you're looking for work, you need to have the notification come to you immediately. And what is the point of having a notification if it's going to delay you? Because by the time you see the job, there's already 400 plus people that have applied to it. And like we know with recruiters, they look at the first 5 to 10, call through that list. And then if somebody is a strong candidate from there, they'll stop there because they're so inundated. And so the speed of delivering these notifications. Then the other thing I notice is delayed emails about messages that you get. And I know the point is to continue engagement, but there have been messages that you sent me, Mark and Ashley, that I've already responded to, but like later on in the day, like 4 to 5 hours later, it'll say, hey, Mark or Ashley sent you a message. And I'm like, okay, I'll look, but it's the one I already responded to, but it's a way to get you back on. So I understand that part.
And to clarify, these are notifications you get on your email.
Correct. Yeah. It's because I'm like,
just want to be clear here that everybody gets it. If you have your email attached to your LinkedIn profile, which most people do, you will get a notification that has been, but you already responded. And sometimes I've seen them as late as 8 hours. So yeah, and a lot of people don't pay attention to their LinkedIn mail. They don't care because they don't like the way it looks, and there's no way to organize the boxes on there, as far as I remember, unless somebody can tell me that I'm wrong. I'm cool with that. But I think that, I think you can miss a legitimate opportunity by not checking your LinkedIn mail. I check it a lot because there's sometimes I do get timely messages that I would need to respond to. and it matters. Timing matters. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but check your LinkedIn messages. Ashley, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say if you're experiencing layoffs right now, as hard as it is right now, know that things will get better and things will improve with time. But in the meantime, find ways to bring in legitimate income for yourself so you don't have to wonder if you're going to be able to put food on the table or keep the lights on. I've shared a few with you guys already. There's a whole bunch more that you can use. There's a platform that I used to use all the time called Work at Home Adventures. It's WAHadventures.com. This is a platform for
Mhm.
finding home jobs and opportunities. I've used it for years when I needed to bring in extra money, and that's a resource that you can use as well. And good luck on your hunt.
Yep. I wish you all well as well. I think one of the things that people will need to also keep in mind is that your state of mind really does matter when you're job searching, your mindset. You could be setting yourself up for a trap if you are full of anxiety, stress, depression, a lack of faith, even could be a hindrance to your job search in the sense that you're worn down. You've applied to a lot of jobs. You've had a lot of conversations. You might be doing all the right things and nothing's come, but yet somebody comes along with something that sounds really good. And that's what happens to a lot of victims. They've gotten trapped. But if they don't do that pre-work before, I think that's very important. It's very important for you not to job search alone. That's why we're here. That's why I have the community on Substack, the job scam report. I'm dealing with job scams, but I'm also helping you with strategies. And that's one of the things I talk about a lot on the newsletter is how to prepare your mind and your heart to do the research and do for everybody that approaches you about a job. There might be times where you need to ignore everything. And it's possible also, and we talked about this before, that there might be a legitimate position, but from a recruiter with scammy behavior. And you might have to skip out on that if that person doesn't behave in a way that's professional, in a way that you would consider them a coworker. I say things like that, but do your research. I don't want to set hard rules, but one thing for sure that if you're uncertain, you're not comfortable, your gut says no, don't do it. That's probably the
And
best thing.
and
Go
then
ahead,
there's
Jack.
one thing I wanted to add when it comes to this job search and job market is layoff PTSD is a thing, and it's not often
Yes.
discussed because many people, they find their identity through the work that they do. I mean, myself, my last role, I considered in my dream job. It's what I worked years to get to, and then to be laid off in that fashion, it was a major blow. And then you have people you're responsible for, and you don't know where you're going to actually find the next opportunity, and especially when. And you go through every single stage of like loss, similar to a death, because it is the death of that position. And so like, no, this didn't happen to me. Then you have the bargaining. Maybe I can come back when the market picks up. And then you go through denial, acceptance, and everything. And then ultimately, you just need to have resources and people like us to help you, but then also people in your immediate circle that you can talk to and share things with. Because the other side of being laid off is that the people you once worked with, they typically don't talk to you again. And if you had like
Mhm.
valid friendships with them, you're like confused. And I talked about this many months ago, and I think it's called survivor's guilt. And that's similar
Mhm.
like to someone is in a plane crash, God forbid,
Right.
and one person survives, they feel guilty because they're living. And I think when people are still in a role that, or at a company that you were laid off from, they don't know how to actually broach a conversation with you anymore because they typically are like, it's just awkward. They don't know what to do. So I
Right.
understand that part of it. Reach out to the people that, if you're still employed, reach out to the people you were cool with that were once with you because they need it. Like, it's really bad out here. I don't want to go too far down there. People,
Right.
it's bad out here. So they need lifelines, they need help, and just believing, but then also mitigating what it is that you watch. So don't watch the reports of all the mass layoffs because that can frame your mindset. And different people are graced to deal with different things. And so it's like, certain people can handle being inundated with that kind of content. Certain people can wade through the muck and the mire and still be whole mentally, but other people, it would weigh on them to the point where it would be detrimental. So it's just knowing yourself, not admitting or not saying that you're weak or anything, but just knowing what your limits are and keeping yourself insulated to as much as possible.
That's such an excellent rundown of layoff PTSD. I think I'm going to address that in the next newsletter next week. I think that's
Yeah,
something to
it's
really
a
talk
major
about, because
thing.
I think that it is a real thing. In fact, there's a couple of books that even talk about it. One of them, my mentor wrote. His name is Damien Burkle. He wrote, name of the book escapes me. He wrote it some years ago. But he talks about that there's this emotional wave that people go through. And part of the Hebrew where he mentions PTSD being a very real thing, especially for those who've been laid off multiple times. And even more so now that people have been laid off multiple times and or scammed multiple times. That people have been scammed 3 or 4 times. And it makes it really hard to wonder who you could trust and what you could trust. And that's really real. And that's one of the things that I want to help people also look out for are those feelings, and then maybe reach out to a community and round up people that will help them with their confidence and help them with to reassure them that there are really good opportunities out there, that they are worthy, that they are worthy of the position that they desire. We're going to call it quits right here on the Job Scam Report. Thank you very much. You can only find it on LinkedIn and YouTube, and also the audio version will be published tomorrow morning on Substack. Those are only 3 places because I haven't decided whether it's going to be on Spotify or any of those yet. I like it on Substack. The who?
I said, what about that TikTok thing?
Yeah, the TikTok. I never saw it on TikTok. I thought I sent it there, but I never saw it appear.
Investigating.
Yeah, we'll see about that. We don't know if TikTok is still going to have time left. That's a horse for another one. But anyway, thank you all very much for commenting, for checking us out, for watching. I know there was a number of you who did it, and these videos have done really well on LinkedIn as far as getting visibility. Share with your friends, share the resources, follow Jay and follow Ashley. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the thread. You can also DM them, even though you're not connected with. I don't know if you knew that, but if you can, if you're even third party, you can, or a third connection, you can go ahead and DM them, or you can contact them however they want to be contacted. I know Ashley has a YouTube channel. Jay, I know yours is coming up strong by the end of the year, right? So,
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Now you're working on it. I know you got bigger fish to fry, but I know you should have one. So in the meantime, thank you very much, and you all have a good day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Guys.